Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Great Wednesday morning here on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in at 7:06. And coming up at 8:05, Steve Moore from Heritage Foundation and a economic advisor to the Trump campaign talk about, the economy and yesterday's debate. And at 8:35, Brent Bozell has plenty to say. Of course, he's the president of Media Research Center. He's got plenty to say about CBS News' so-called moderation. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Hey, let's bring in Abel Maldonado. He used to be my lieutenant governor when I lived in California. He's now a surrogate for the Trump campaign. And Abel, you have an easy job today, I got to tell you. So let me start with this. Here are three headlines for you to marinate in. Here's the one from the New York Times. Vance's dominant debate performance shows why he's Trump's running mate. Here's Politico. It was a very Midwestern debate, and Vance won. And now here's my favorite from Variety in Hollywood. Here's the Variety headline. In the vice presidential debate, Tim Walz had better policy points, but his addled delivery rolled right off J.D. Vance's Reagan-esque smoothness. Wow, Abel. I mean, talk about, it was a clean sweep last night. Congratulations to the campaign.
You know what? First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I was with JD in Arena. We've been really working Nevada really hard about, I'm going to say 4.5 weeks ago. And I knew at the time we talked about Kamala Harris, what she'd done in California. But I knew at the time he was just sharp as a tack. They were just beating him up every single day and driving his numbers down. But, now we know one of the decisions that President Trump, most important decision, is who's going to run with him. And that's J.D. Vance. We know, and look what he did.
And the other side of that same coin, Mr. Maldonado, is Kamala Harris has had one decision as an executive so far to reflect on how she'd perform as president, and her choice was Tim Walz.
100%. That you couldn't say it more clear. Obviously, I've had a front row seat to Kamala in California. My God, I can't believe she's getting away with what she's done. In California, you don't have to talk to the press. You're going to get elected in a deep blue state. You can just shun the press, not talk to anybody, and it even gets better in California. In California, you send a reporter an email, say, "Hey, what's your question?" I'm going to respond via email. She's been doing that. But last night, we got to see the mistake of hiding because Tim Walz has been hiding. Yeah. Look what he did last night. It was a disaster for them.
Yeah, there is something to be said, and we've talked about this earlier, about Vance essentially challenging himself. He goes into the lion's den. He has interviews with unfriendly press. It's very clear that the Democrats, they have a problem in that they are never challenged. They never have to answer difficult questions. That was on stark display last night, especially when Walz answered the China question and others. But he wasn't pressed enough. Did it frustrate you that they didn't ask Walz about, for instance, some of his other lies and flip-flops that really would have shown the American public that he is sort of a habitual liar?
100%, but the press calls him over-embellishing, not consistent with the facts. He's a liar. Yeah. He's a buffoon. He's a liar. That's what he is. It's crazy, and he gets a pass. But last night he was exposed. It's 38 days, and here we go. We keep marching on. The issues are on our side. We need to be focused. We need to be disciplined, and we need to show high energy, and we are in the next 38 days. So we need to keep going. Don't let Kamala do what she did to California, to the swing states. It's a pretty easy message. I mean, last night you heard J.D. when he made it very clear. The person you work for, Mr. Walz, has been there for 1,400 days. She hasn't done it. Mm-hmm. And it was just an easy transition for J.D. Look, it's still a battle. We still got to get out and vote. We still got to get out and work really, really hard. And we can get there as long as we stay on our game. I mean, the issues are on our side.
We're speaking to Abel Maldonado. He was the lieutenant governor of California back when I lived there. And, of course, I've been exiled here to the Mid-Atlantic and thrilled to be here, by the way. And I'm never leaving. But I have noted to our listeners here that it is telling, I think, that when pressed on issues, Kamala Harris does not refer to her 3.5 years as the vice president in charge of so many of the things that have become disasters, like the border. She doesn't even refer to her time in the U.S. Senate. She keeps calling back to being the Attorney General of California and the District Attorney in the County of San Francisco. And I think she does that because most of the press in New York and D.C., they didn't live there. They didn't know what it was like. Can you please talk about the pivot that the state of California made under the leadership of Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom, and Kamala Harris? The three of them so radically changed where California was going and where it's ended up.
Absolutely. And let's just go ahead, while we're talking about San Francisco, let's add Barbara Boxer. Let's add Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco. Let's ask Willie Brown from San Francisco. I can go on and on. They're all San Francisco. Yeah, Dianne Feinstein. It's all San Francisco politicians, liberal as hell. And what's happened is all of a sudden, people just started leaving us. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I was lieutenant governor with Arnold Schwarzenegger. We were the last ones there with the Republican Party. And then we looked at each other and we kept saying, our voters are leaving and they're gone. And that's why they've had carte blanche with whatever they do. But California is starting to slow down, to wake up little by little. Don't know if it's too late, but you are right, Larry. California has everything. We have Napa, we have Yosemite, we have wine, we have the beaches, but we have the worst government in the country, and Kamala Harris has been at the top of that government. When she was, they call her a prosecutor. They don't call her a San Francisco prosecutor. Her ads just say prosecutor. I mean, she is a San Francisco prosecutor.
So, and she people see these videos of people walking into CVS or drugstores and clearing the shelves in a hefty bag and nothing happens to them. She wrote the language of the proposition under the guise of criminal justice reform that allowed those crimes to be considered a misdemeanor, so they're not prosecuted. She led the way for all the other Soros prosecutors now that are destroying the state. It can't be overstated, and you're right. Don't let her do to the rest of the country what she did to California. So give me sort of your on-the-ground analysis of what's happening in Nevada. Obviously, California is going to go blue. That's just the way it is for now. But Nevada and Arizona are important. I've got to think they're deploying you there. How's it looking? And are you worried about some of the election shenanigans that we definitely saw in those two states, Clark County in Nevada and Maricopa County in Arizona?
Of course. We have both chairmen of parties of both states, very vigilant. We have attorneys on the ground being very vigilant. Yes, I've been dispatched to Nevada and Arizona a lot and been spending there. But I got to tell you, everywhere I go, and I don't tell people who I am or where I'm doing, where I'm volunteering. Tell me what you think about the state of the race. Oh, we're for Trump. I was in a taxi cab the other day, and this guy says to me, oh, I'm voting for Trump. I says, why would you vote for him? He says he tells the truth and he's not a politician, and I love him. And it gives you the flavor. It gives you the flavor of what real people think, not inside the bubble Washington people.
By the way, why is Abel Maldonado in Arizona and Nevada trying to get votes for Trump? Because he's talking to the Californians who left. He's like, oh, we know you. You were in Sacramento when things were, pretty okay. Yeah, exactly. All right.
I got to tell you something. Kamala, when she was a DA, she was horrible. This going to the border, it was just to check off the box. She doesn't care about the border. She didn't care about it when she was Attorney General. She didn't care about it when she was a U.S. Senator. She doesn't care about it now. She just went to the border to get elected. That's what she's trying to do.
Well, and the swing of Latino voters in this country, in 2016, Democrats under Hillary Clinton enjoyed a plus 50 advantage for Latinos. In 2020, Biden had plus 36. Right now, Kamala Harris is sitting at plus 14. That is an earthquake politically, and much because of the policies of Donald Trump, but also because of great surrogates like Abel Maldonado. Sir, thank you for joining us. We're out of time, but enjoy the rest of your day. Like I said, you've got a fun task today to recap last night's debate.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Let's stay the course.
You bet. 7:15
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which, of course, he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
That right there in 40 seconds is a great example of J.D. Vance's complete and total domination of this debate, domination of Tim Walz, domination of the moderators, domination of the issues, but also communicated in an empathetic and comprehensive, clear way. You know, his writing skills. Don't forget, he is a best-selling author. He has written a screenplay. Everything about I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like I'm gushing, but this is the greatest political debate performance I've ever seen.
There was a rhetorical sort of thing that Vance was doing. See, I can't even talk as smoothly as Steve. I'm like, that he did throughout the debate. He would sometimes say something like, "I actually agree with Tim."
Yes.
Or
it was very disarming
very,
what he did.
Very disarming when he did. He would say, I agree with him. Or some of what he said is correct. Or there were these little moments where what that does to an audience is it's like, oh, he's a reasonable guy. He's a reasonable guy. And, you know, you've heard some of the I don't agree with this, but you've heard some of the criticism saying Vance is unreasonable or he's intransigent, whatever. That was very smart. That was a very smart way to make him look like a reasonable guy. He's listening to the other side.
And that, by the way, is in spite of, again, a 3-on-1 performance, as Nora O'Donnell and Maureen Brennan were absolutely in the tank, not only in the topic selections, but also their behavior. Here's Brennan. There was an end of a second round of questions had to do with the border. And Brennan, the CBS moderators had said publicly there will be no fact-checking. We're not going to get into that. So listen to what happens when Brennan cannot help herself. She threw in this little aside to the audience that made it sound like J.D. Vance had just lied about the immigration status of the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. So now listen to what happened.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Yeah, they cut their mics. And I mean, everything about this was atrocious, and not least of which, just fundamentally, as a voter, we've got two people trying to win my vote. They're engaged back and forth in a topic that is vitally important. Let them talk.
They cut the mics after Tim Walz lied about that provision.
Yes, right. Of course. Well, of course. By the way, so we have our reaction to that. We believe that J.D. Vance looked brilliant. He looked smart. He actually corrected the misleading fact check that Ms. Brennan inserted into the process. But, boy, if you're over on MSNBC and you're Nicole Wallace, cut 21 here. Here was her reaction to that moment.
Like muting powers. And I actually think if you're
a woman, that might be the worst moment J.D. Vance had, because he was going to mansplain right over that mute button. He was, and again, I don't pretend to know how everyone will react to this. I think that a lot of women in positions of authority that should command respect just by virtue of that dynamic will see themselves in some dude that disrespected them and talked over. I mean, there was a moment like that with then Vice Presidential in the Harris-Pence debate.
Women in authority who should command respect by virtue of that dynamic. That is a fascinating statement there. In other words, you need to shut your mouth and not disrespect me, even when I'm wrong, because I'm the woman in charge. And by the way, the moderators are not in charge. That's the misperception.
But it also suggests that because it's a woman, she needs special privileges, right? That she's delicate or that she's timid. And because of that, we need to treat her, delicately. We need to be careful to not interrupt her. Yeah. That is insane. True equality is, look, we're going to have a debate. We're going to treat people. You're the moderator, and I think what you said is incorrect. I'm going to correct you. It has nothing to do with your sex. And in fact, I'm respecting you more by treating you the same as I would treat a male moderator who said something wrong.
That's respect.
That's respect.
Yeah, I'm going to treat you the same regardless of what body. By the way, they can't even say. Nicole Wallace, quick follow-up question. Define what a woman is.
Yeah, suddenly we know what a woman is. Yeah.
Coming up, we've got more clips from last night's debate, absolutely dominated by the Republican nominee for Vice President, J.D. Vance. Honestly, today, I don't say it often, I am really proud to be a Republican today. It's 7:23.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37 now on a busy Wednesday morning as we plow through this busy news cycle. And we got some help coming up at 8:05. Steve Moore, economic advisor to the Trump campaign, will join us. Also 8:35, Brent Bozell, Media Research Center, on the incredibly biased and honestly just shoddy performance by the CBS moderators last night. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. There's more to get to here with these clips. We just played that moment where the moderator, Margaret Brennan, tries to inject herself into it. The bias is bad, Julie, but my biggest problem is they lose sight of why they're even there. This is about the voters being able to hear the candidates. And they're trying to, grandstand as if there's some platform here for them to promote themselves.
We need to stop giving these women, as the left and Nicole Wallace so loved to say last night, the authority over these. There's no we should not. The Republicans should not be agreeing to this anymore.
It's true. Yeah,
these are simply campaign staffers running these debates. We need to stop. It is the age of the internet. We do not need these dinosaur legacy media television channels anymore.
What is I feel like there's something like I'm in the Twilight Zone, but if you think you can be president of the United States and by virtue of the job, vice president means you think you can be president as well, God forbid something happens, then if you think you have the skills and the knowledge and the ability to engage at the highest level of American politics, shouldn't you be able to conduct a 90-minute question and answer session with your opponent without some journalist injecting themselves? Just let the two of them talk.
Helping you.
Hell yeah, helping you. Forget about it.
Exactly.
Oh,
I am so but honestly, I feel like we are abused women. We are abused wives. We keep going, but we are abused spouses. We keep going back.
Yep.
We keep going back to get smacked around. Stop it. We don't need this anymore. We don't need the legacy media anymore. And we should not subject ourselves. Republicans should not subject themselves to this kind of abuse. And thank God J.D. Vance is so skilled. And frankly, so is Trump under a 3-to-1 situation. But we shouldn't do this anymore.
All right. The one tough question that Tim Walz got had to do with the latest lie that he claimed forever that he was in Hong Kong when the events of Tiananmen Square occurred. We talked about this yesterday. We had on Alana Goodman of the Free Beacon where they fact-checked this. It's obviously a lie. So here's the question about that and Tim Walz's response, his answer, his explanation as to why he lied about that.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah. All right. Now, before you hear his answer, listen to how the question. Can you explain the discrepancy? Ma'am, again, I know you're a professional journalist. I know that you host Face the Nation. I know that you're sitting there as a very well-paid and high-profile moderator of a vice presidential debate. But I don't think you understand the English language. That's not a discrepancy. It's an out-and-out fabrication. It's a lie.
You read
it's
a book
a fraud.
Lately. It's not a discrepancy.
Discrepancy. Can you explain the discrepancy? All right, so here's Tim Walz, the man who wants to be a heartbeat away from the president. Here's Tim Walz explaining the discrepancy about why he said he was in Hong Kong during the events at the Tiananmen Square when he was not.
Well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17. Worked on family farms.
Okay.
And then
I tell you what, I've already seen that. This goes on for about 2 minutes, so I'm just going to let him keep talking here while we sort of reassess. But that it should be a pretty simple. He's in Nebraska riding his bike, so it's going to take a while for him to get to Hong Kong if he's riding his bike. So it's going to be a long answer. But there's a whole lot of avoidance going on.
Honestly, there's that scene in Goonies where the guy goes start from the beginning and the little kid goes, well.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I started in kindergarten.
Well, he was clearly prepped here. It was like, okay, you're going to get asked this, so how are we going to approach it? Hey, I've got an idea. But let's see if he's getting to the point yet.
But it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people. Working on things like farm bills that we got.
Okay, yeah, he's talking about farm bills in Congress now.
Right, not yet
don't know how that relates to Tiananmen Square, but I'm sure he'll get to it in a minute. We'll just let him keep talking here, and we'll check in another 30 seconds. This was, by the way, this is one of those moments where they did the split screen, and J.D. Vance says, look, people are comparing it to Jim in The Office when Jim would look at the camera and give the reaction. That's exactly what's going on here.
Tim Watt's still talking.
Yeah, oh yeah, he is. Let's check in.
I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID.
Well,
and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do
the question.
Lying,
I get it.
Lying is about trying
the
to.
The question is, you said you were in Hong Kong. You weren't in Hong Kong. Why did you lie? And he's like, this is about understanding the world around us.
I used to ride my bike till the street light came on.
All right, let's see if they finally get
do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
What?
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Okay, well, I mean, that clears it all up, doesn't it?
Yes. The silence from the two moderators who are very clearly on their side.
You know,
they were just like, dude, you can do better.
The only thing that answer has to do with Tiananmen Square is that it was a massacre. It's 7:43. Listen.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
For your time, Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy.
That's a clear, coherent answer to this. I don't. Was it that J.D. Vance was so good and he was so good, or is it that he was so hapless?
Yeah,
and just like a complete and total meltdown.
It's a tough one.
How did the media react? Well, we'll start with Geraldo Rivera, of all people, no fan of the Trump ticket.
There is no doubt in my mind, however Governor Walz did in terms of sincerity, that Vance won this debate.
Chris Cuomo, who, again, no fan of Republicans anywhere.
They were talking at one point. Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right. And the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And meanwhile, over on CNN, I think my favorite is Jake Tapper, who obviously, had to concede that J.D. Vance absolutely dominated. But he had a good excuse for him. Listen to this.
J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
J.D. Vance, just let the record reflect, J.D. Vance has been in politics for a little over 2 years when he launched his Senate campaign. He's been in elected office for only about a year and a half. Before that, he was in the private sector and was a novelist and an investor. Tim Walz is a 2-term governor and a multiple-term congressman.
Yeah.
And J.D. Vance has more experience in debates and political debates?
I love how Tapper was one of the people who kind of ignored the fact that Biden, the man who's been in office for 100 years and has debated his entire career, that's the only thing he's done, is he's been a politician. That, like, when he was failing, Tapper was like, nothing to see here. Nothing,
Please.
Right?
Meanwhile, let's check in on MSNBC. While everyone else is conceding, J.D. Vance had a good night. Good night for Republicans. What's the reaction on MSNBC?
It's the audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. Mm-hmm. The audacity is that someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right? I mean, they should have just, this is a debate. This may be the only chance people have to see the difference.
She has lost her mind.
Nicole Wallace was reduced to being a blithering, ranting, borderline profane fool in her reaction. And that's what she got. It's 7:53.